You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. Glad that you're here with us. It's going to be a great show today. We'll have Shane joining us momentarily, so we'll be able to have a conversation. And it's going to get political. A lot of people like political conversations, right? So politics never used to be that in the foreground of. News used to be about a lot of other stuff, and now a lot of our politicians have captured a lot of our news, and it's all about them and all about what they're doing, and they've kind of reached celebrity status. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today, and what do we think that does to our society, and is that something that should be? Should we always be talking about our politicians and it's all about them and they're celebrities now and whatever. But anyways, we'll talk about that and much more about the United States politics compared to Canada's politics. So that's a little bit of a deep dive. We have local news as well. We'll have some local weather to start the show as usual. We'll have your comments, and we're live on CKLU 96.7 FM on the radio. So I'll do my best to read your comments on air. And if I can't get to all of them, I will then do my best to just get them up on the screen. So if you're listening on the radio, you can check back to the shows on demand and check out what's been going on in the conversation. A lot of times they will edit in the conversation section. They'll take out certain comments. I'm not sure why. They'll leave some, take out some. So I try to do my best to get them up on the screen. So when you're watching the video, you can see at least 3 lines. If you're typing more than 2.5 to 3 lines, the program that I'm using will not show up on the screen. Just to let you know, that's not me editing your words. It's the program that I'm using. And so with that, we're live on Facebook.com/Sudbury News. Still, touch wood. It's great. Take it as it comes. And YouTube.com/Sudbury News as well. Grateful for the platforms themselves. Grateful for the moderators. Thankful that we have the technology in order to reach out, have this conversation about news that's happening locally and in our world. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back right after the weather. We'll try to get things, gone through so that way we have enough time with Shane to have a really good conversation. He's not able to stay with us he's only able to be with us till about 8:15, I believe. So anyways, we'll be back after the weather, right after this, with local news, headlines, and unpacking things a little bit, and then a deep dive into politics in general. We'll have a great conversation today, right after this. And Sudbury weather is brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. 8 degrees currently. And today it's cloudy currently. 40% chance of showers early this morning, clearing near noon. Wind will be gusting up to about 50, becoming light this afternoon. High of 17, UV index 6. Tonight, clear. Fog patches developing before morning. Low of 7, so it's getting cooler. Thursday, mainly sunny, fog patches dissipating in the morning, high of 24, humidex 26. So tomorrow will be nice and warm. UV index 7 or high. Look at your long range, mainly sunny. Tomorrow, 24 is your high. Sunny on Friday, 24. 40% chance of showers on Saturday, high of 26. And then mix of sun and cloud for Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Sunday, 28, Monday, 30, and Tuesday, 29. So rather warm days after Saturday. So look at your satellite. If you're on the video feeds, if you're on the radio, basically all clear up until a stretch of clouds between us and Timmins on a diagonal. Winds coming in from the northwest, pushing the clouds kind of down, and then that'll bring us the sun that's in the forecast coming up. That's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with news, your comments on the news, and a little deep dive into politics right after this. And we're back. Got a few people joining us. Good little bunch this morning. Judy, sorry, David beat you to the punch this morning as the first person on. So good morning. Stay safe. Take care. He must be recovering well there at York Extended Care. He's definitely on first today. Judy, here you are. Good morning. And Denise, good morning from Espanola. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying that we did notice that some comments have been hidden. Oh, for sure. Definitely. I said that the other day too, and some other people were like, no, they're not. They're always there. And I'm like, no, they definitely take off certain comments. For some reason, I'm not sure why. Belinda, good morning. Those who judge will never understand. Those that understand will never judge. Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool. Appreciate that. It's kind of like I learned something a little bit more every day from your morning comments, your morning kind of quotes. Appreciate it. Monique, good morning, everyone. Nice sunshine emoji. Mona, good morning. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday. Good morning, Louise. Thanks for joining us. And because of my eyesight, I'm not able to decipher the emoji there, but it wouldn't be the first time. I definitely have to work on my eyesight. Anyways, I'm going to be reading a book soon about just that alone, how to do that. But anyways, in some local news, thanks for being with us, everyone. Hopefully it's going to be a great show. Make sure to comment whenever, you feel you have something that you wanted to add to the conversation. Saw this on the news yesterday locally. A developer says he was duped. I better open the channel for Shane to join on here. I haven't opened it yet. I'll probably be sitting here wondering why he's not able to come on. Developer said he was duped on Elgin building wants the city to step in. So do you know the building that's attached to where the Samaritan Center is, kind of right beside the Lido Hotel there downtown? Oh, it's coffee time. That's Louise. Perfect. Yeah. Morning. Get you going a little bit. So there's that building that's downtown next to the Lido, where the Samaritan Center is attached to. It kind of runs almost from Samaritan Center all the way to the bridge over Paris Street. And it's a bit of an eyesore. It's really, oh my goodness. I saw some pictures of the inside of it. Wow. Just a sight for sore eyes. Anyways, that's probably the wrong term. It is a sore sight for your eyes, put it that way. A Southern Ontario realtor who closed the Elgin Street building he bought less than a year ago after the city deemed it unfit for human occupation, hopes the city of Greater Sudbury will buy the building, as they did the Lido Hotel in June. Further, he alleges he was tricked into the purchase by the seller, and all attempts to repair or add security to the building have been thwarted. The irregularly shaped block-sized building is addressed as 352 and 362 Elgin. It's located directly behind Samaritan Center, as we said, by the Lido. The city is spending approximately $2 million to purchase the triangle-shaped block on which the old hotel building currently stands, the Lido, the owner in question told Sudbury.com he purchased the building on Elgin October 2022 for $2.25 million. But since that time, all hell has broken loose. You can read more about that story at Sudbury.com. Loud bang in the flour mill yesterday. Residents in the flour mill were left wondering what happened after a loud bang late Monday night. Two days ago, sorry. Greater Sudbury Police said in an email to Sudbury.com that police received a call at around 9:05 p.m. reporting the loud bang in the area of King Street and Whistle Avenue. Emergency services attended the area. Officers walked various trails in the area, searching the area for signs of an explosion, it said in the email. Officers did not find any strange smell, smoke, or debris. There have not been any reports of injuries. It's unknown what caused the loud bang. Both of those stories from Sudbury.com's Good Morning to Start Your Day segment. Switching now to Sudbury.news, our website that aggregates all of the local news in one place when it works. I'm going to be reaching out to my guy today to see if we can't fix this situation. Used car market faces a supply crunch after the aftermath of COVID, right? All the supply chain issues. So now there's a used car backlog, and mark my words, they're more expensive, supply and demand, right? So they're definitely going to be more expensive. Young Sudbury singers are taking registrations for upcoming season. Registration night runs September 13th at Sudbury Secondary School. You can find both those stories I just talked about at Sudbury.com as well. Monarch butterfly. Sudbury doing its part for threatened monarch butterfly. Expanding food habitat in the city may help elevate the monarch from a species of special concern under the Federal Species at Risk Act. Monarch butterflies, very beautiful. You can read more about that at the Sudbury Star, SudburyStar.com. If you want to do your part to keep monarch butterflies around our area. Linda says, so sad that the downtrodden souls are not getting the help they need. Winter is coming. Where are these poor souls sleeping? So that's probably in response to the dilapidated building downtown that's been condemned. So many units in there, right? Could have been used for people in housing. What's the theory behind the big bang in the flour mill? LOL. Yeah, exactly. I don't have one myself. Could it have been the mines? I know we live in Sudbury and depends where you live, but sometimes we get these seismic activities and they could be pretty loud, but I don't know. I didn't hear the bang myself, so didn't talk to anybody firsthand. Okay, so let's see here, just looking through. So the zombie film shoot in Sudbury about to open, a zombie comedy filmed in Greater Sudbury and starring Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, is opening in theaters Friday. We remember that. Seemed like it was about a year ago where they were in town and, they were kind of seen around town, interviewed by local media and things like that. So now it's going to be opening in theaters on Friday. So hopefully it's a bigger, movie at the box office. Oh, Jesse says it was him in the flour mill. Hey, if there's not a rumor yet, you might as well start one. But I hope you're joking there, because there might be people who are watching the show who are taking you seriously. Vin, morning. Glad that you're with us. Hope you're having a great Wednesday as we're waiting for Shane to come on board here. So, mobile clinic brings vet services to those in need. A mobile pet clinic is operating across Greater Sudbury, offering services to those pet owners in need of vet care. So that's a neat idea, a mobile. Yes, Jesse says he was joking. Good that you clarified that, because you never know. There are some people who could have taken that statement literally. I kind of got your tongue-in-cheek comment there myself. So yeah, mobile pet clinic. That's kind of neat. Just goes around helping people's pets. Time to read. So this is from Sudbury.com, where letter to the editor basically saying it's time to review the moose mismanagement. Retired moose biologist Alan Bissett says the province believes moose hunting injects $200 million into the province's economy, but the poor state of the moose population and dwindling numbers of discouraged hunters suggests numbers are wildly out of date. That would be sad if there's a situation with the moose population. Jesse says pretty sure the noise was a shelf falling owner at the Amazon facility. Okay, so looks like Shane will be joining us here. We got you live, Shane. You're here, so let's see if I can get you up on the screen. Are you ready and able to let's see, is everything working on your end, et cetera, et cetera?
Seems to be.
Well, you're looking good, Shane. You're looking good this morning.
Thanks. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I was determined.
You did. You made it just in time. We're just going through some of the local news stories. One last one I want to get to, though, maybe get your take on it as well. Sudbury.com in their Good Morning to Start Your Day segment. Well, this is interesting. Oh, there you go. It was on yesterday's, but I got today's now. So here's the news that follow up on something we've talked about on the show quite a bit. Extremely concerning. 2 Northern Ontario safe consumption sites fear closure. Anxiety is mounting over the future of 2 supervised consumption sites in Northern Ontario as funding for them is set to run out at the end of the year. The northern sites of Sudbury and Timmins, where opioid overdose rates are well above the provincial average, wonder if there's a link there, have been paying for the sites in their communities for several months, but say long-term support isn't sustainable, which is why they've appealed to the province for permanent funding. Both communities are so far waiting on the Ontario government to respond. It's extremely concerning, and I don't know what we're going to do, Timmins Mayor says during the recent phone interview with Sudbury.com. This is a medical crisis, and these sites should be funded by the Ministry of Health. Do you have any comments or suggestions on that front?
Well, I mean, the libertarian side of me doesn't care for the funding part, but I mean, the idea of supervised consumption sites, I'm all for, not mainly for the reason of public safety. Like, I work downtown, I walk through downtown every day, and having to dodge the needles every day isn't very pleasant. So I think it's for me, it's a safety thing. Like, if you have a location because personally, when it comes to drug use, obviously it's a sad thing, and it's not something we should partake in, but people are going to do it anyway. And when it comes to adults doing it, give them a location where they could do it safely out of public space. That's the way I see it. I'm kind of on the fence about it.
Yeah, it's not a cut and dry thing, right? Because it's a huge problem with a lot of layers to it. What's causing it in the first place? Is it societal? Is it individual? Is it systemic? Like, how are we treating as a whole? So this is one small piece of the puzzle, like you mentioned, right? So there's a safety concern for the community where the needles are going. That's one whole thing by itself. So, the whole idea, Miles is saying it's rather expensive because you need professionals on site and you need to pay them,
Yeah, that's the thing. Where's the money
Mhm.
coming from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. And is it money well spent? Could we spend more money in reducing the amount, in preventative measures to stop people from starting in the first place? Is that a good place to start? Could that be better for society? Do we need to have these on a temporary basis as we are rejigging and rethinking the way we treat um, addictions? You know what I mean? And then, okay, it's only going to be temporary. Now we really want to focus on reduction, not just harm reduction, but use reduction and preventing
yeah,
harmful, you
and
know.
I mean it's complicated because there obviously needs to be a rehabilitation aspect attached to the safe consumption site, but at the same time, you can't force people into rehabilitation either.
No,
I know some people think that actually should go that far, and I'm like, no. I mean, you can't. It's got to go both ways. You can't coerce
no,
people into
no,
uh, rehabilitation. So
no. Now, Jesse's saying everything's expensive because we're letting the rich walk away with what used to be the profit that drives the companies. And Michael is saying preventative measures is too late. That's why we need those sites, and that's what I was saying as well. Like,
yeah,
could we look at having them there for on a temporary basis as we really have a focused, concerted effort to really help at the front end people getting into using in the first place. You know what I mean? But have these safe consumption sites there in the meantime because it is an epidemic, and we kind of do need them in the meantime. This is actual This is the actual zombie epidemic, is what Belinda's saying. The drug use over the last 3 years since COVID and the Trudeau regime has done nothing but exacerbate the situation. I hope that is exacerbate, because that's what it looks like to me. But it means the same thing, I'm sure. Soon it's going to be cold turkey for drugs, drink, and medicine. So I guess that's, if supplies are not available. Like, let's just say there's a supply crisis, with things, and we're not able to get them. Can you imagine? It's great that we have all the supplies right now and we're helping people, but if there was a shortage at any given time, there could be a huge backlash, right? Anyways, I guess that's just one possibility. So a lot of people chiming in on this, which is great. But I really wanted to move on with what we were going to be talking about today. And with that, there's a video I wanted to talk about, and this is political, right? You see the two consumption sites wanting money from the government, and government has a place in our society. It's kind of come, it's evolved in many ways, and how politics is done, what we think about it, and whatever. And so John Stossel has a take on politics, and I just want to take a second. Let's look at his view on mainly the situation in the United States. And I know Dave and Stephen will really appreciate this video, especially at the beginning. And then, as it goes on, all of us will be able to appreciate it, and we'll be able to unpack it right after. So this is John Stossel, and I'll be back with Shane to kind of deconstruct it right after this.
Who will be our next president? Polls say it's a
dead heat between President Biden and former President Trump.
And the more accurate betting odds say a Biden-Trump rematch is probable. That's odd, since most Americans don't like either man.
Joe Biden is the second most unpopular president in modern U.S. history.
And Donald Trump is even more unpopular than Joe Biden.
There's a good reason people don't like them. Trump is mean.
You're a nasty person.
That guy's got a serious weight problem.
He mocks people.
I don't remember.
He hires people, then calls them incompetent. He stiffs contractors and often doesn't pay little people who worked for him. And finally, he's just divisive.
Radical left lunatics, maniacs, and perverts.
But Biden is divisive too. Running for office, he promised.
I will draw on the best of us, not the worst.
But now that he's president, he attacks his opponents as
full of anger, violence, hate, and division.
Both Trump and Biden lie to us. Trump lies even about unimportant things like the crowd at his inauguration, the ratings of his TV show, even about winning a non-existent Man of the Year award. And of course, he lies about big things.
We won this election, and we won it by a landslide.
But he knows it wasn't a landslide, and reportedly knows he lost.
This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
But Biden's deceitful too. When Georgia said voters should show an ID, Biden said,
this is Jim Crow on steroids.
He kept repeating that.
Jim Crow 2.0.
But that's just not fair. Jim Crow stopped black people from voting. After Georgia's law passed, 0% of black voters in Georgia said they had a poor voting experience.
Why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university?
Biden has long lied to advance himself. He wasn't the first in his family to go to college. He plagiarized that line from this British politician.
Why am I the first Kinnick in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
Biden's plagiarized again and again.
The quality of our education, the joy of their play.
The quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
He lied about his law school performance.
Ended up in the top half of my class.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85.
Seems like yesterday, the first time I got arrested anyway.
Biden lied about being arrested at protests. He was never arrested. Biden also says,
I used to drive a tractor trailer.
But he never did. This year, one lie caught up with him. For years, Biden refused to admit he has a 7th grandchild. Until
withering media scrutiny
made that too embarrassing. The worst thing about both men may be the corruption.
Former President Donald Trump indicted again.
I don't like political prosecutions, but so much of what Trump does is just sleazy. Paying a porn star hush money, then lying about it. Refusing to return classified documents and lying about that. Pressuring Vice President Pence not to certify electors. And whipping his supporters into a frenzy about it. But Biden's corrupt too.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China.
But in court, his son admitted he made money from China. For years, Biden claimed,
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
But he was involved with his son's business as his son's business partner.
Hunter Biden would get his dad on the phone, and there would be business associates or potential business associates, foreign nationals, and it was about sending a signal about influence and access and power.
Maybe I shouldn't call Biden's lies lies.
Well, we're going to win and we're going to help. We have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean.
A railroad across an ocean? Maybe Biden isn't lying. Maybe he's just confused. But that's disturbing, too.
His age, 80 years old, will certainly be a factor voters will have to take into account.
He often shuffles when he walks, and aides worry he will trip on a wire. He stumbles over words during public events.
On 60 Minutes recently, he committed America to a possible war.
To be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
The White House quickly took that back.
When the President of the United States wants to announce a policy change, he will do so. He has not done so.
But it was the 4th time Biden said that. Is Biden too old to be president? Hey, I'm old too, but I just make these videos. I'm not running for what may be the most demanding job in the world.
I am a young, vibrant man.
No, he's not young. He's almost Biden's age. But he found the doctor willing to say his health is astonishingly excellent.
Mr. Trump, I can state unequivocally, will be the healthiest individual ever elected.
Here's that doctor. He now admits.
That letter that showed up in the Times about his health, he wrote himself.
Give me a break. I'm used to disagreeing with president's policies, but our most likely choices are just embarrassing. Can't we do better? We've been interviewing possible presidential candidates.
So much to unpack there, Shane. What were some of your thoughts, anyways, as we kind of looked over, after listening to John Stossel's take on the two candidates that we have a choice for, or the United States do, anyways?
Well, it's unfortunate that Dave and Steve don't seem to be commenting today, because I was anticipating Dave, complaining about, sharing American content, and I was going to say, well, American politics influences our politics to some extent, not totally. Like we definitely do politics differently, but you definitely see some of it spill over. Like one example, like yesterday you were discussing totally different things, and in the comments it was all about the vaccine and the convoy, and regarding the convoy, we remember when that happened, people on the left were saying, it's going to be another January 6th. They're going to storm Parliament and try to overturn the government. And of course, nothing even close to that happened. But those are American references.
Yes.
Right? And we see that on both sides. But anyway, and one more thing about that, you shared a clip from J.J. McCullough last week. He talks about American culture, and he includes Canada in that. Like he looks at North America as a whole, because the two cultures are so similar. There are differences, but there are a lot of similarities as well. So, but my first thought watching that was it's nice to see a political commentator criticizing both sides. Right.
Yeah. And that's you really have to appreciate that from a journalistic perspective, because I think that's what we would hope all journalism would do all the time, right? And there's very few people who are able to do that. So I think if you were starting to watch this video from the beginning, and you were like most people, I guess, or a lot of the mainstream people, you think, yeah, another attack on Trump, I could watch this and till the day's long or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's also saying stuff about someone I might not say anything bad about. And it does something to your brain a bit. Or you watch it and you think, this is hating on Trump. I know where this is going or whatever. So the opposite if you are a Trump supporter. But if you watch the video in its entirety, you have to be left saying to yourself, wait a minute. Both sides are guilty of being of doing things that are less than benevolent. You know what I mean? Sure. So, and that's the world we live in. That's reality.
Yeah, regarding balanced journalism, it's interesting because, like, the leftist media went after Trump with a vengeance from day one. And the coverage of Trump has been extreme from day one on the left. But when it comes to Fox News, they had their own issues too, because their coverage of Trump was pretty negative when he first started running. And then that became inconvenient for them because their ratings started to drop. So their coverage became more positive. Now it's becoming more negative again. So, both sides have their own have their issues.
They definitely do. Now, and here's the thing too. When you look at it without political lenses, it's a lot easier to really look at what's going on. But we're constantly being forced to choose a side. Or, you only have two choices. Which one? You ever get these questions that say, if you had to kill someone in your family, who would it be? And right away you go, what? Why would you ask me something like, no. I know it will never happen. But if you had to, they force you to say, well, it would be my mom or it would be my dad. As if you'd even think that way, right? But yeah. It's here. This is where we're at. You only have two choices. Which one are you going to choose? And, but reality shows us where we're at in terms of our world we live in, or at least in the United States and in Canada. it's very similar, right? So by looking at the United States, we can learn from that. And like you said, it does have implementations in Canada. Their popular culture is basically intertwined with ours. Like we're, in a lot of ways, we're very, very intertwined, whether it's trade, whether it's culture. Politically, sure, there are some differences, but there's still really only the two choices in Canada, even though we have more than two parties, main parties. There is really kind of a left or a liberal, more liberal leaning, and a more conservative one. And you see this in the only two parties that have ever been elected in Canada, the Liberals and the Conservatives, to run the nation, that is. Provincially, it's a little different. But so again, right, is it all that different in Canada than in the States, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there. Like our two top choices right now are Trudeau and Polyev. And I know a lot of conservatives are pretty impressed with Polyev, and for a number of reasons. He's an excellent communicator. He's fun to watch in question period. He's a lot more down to earth, and more pro freedom than Trudeau. But there's quite a bit to criticize as well. Like the top being that he is a career politician. Even Trudeau himself jabbed Polyev in question period one day about that. And I thought, yeah, hate to admit it, but Trudeau's kind of right there. So, career politicians are like the most out of touch people on the planet. And there are other things like social conservatives have a lot to criticize Polyev for. He's very, pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ. He does take climate change seriously. He doesn't believe in a carbon tax, but he still takes it seriously, and on and on. And then from a libertarian perspective, he's very pro Ukraine-Russia war, and he would still be sending a ton of money over there. He is on board with the drug war, which has been an abysmal failure from day one. And I could say many other things, but so we're kind of in the same boat when it comes to those two choices, the two top choices.
Well, exactly. And that's what I said. We've only voted for the two parties federally anyways, right? When it boils down to it. And so it's similar to the United States where it's Republican and Democrat, it's liberal and conservative. And you're, to your point, when they were in question period or in the House of Commons where they were sparring, and I think it was Polyev who started it with Trudeau, and he said, our country's being run, like look at your resume. You were only a part-time drama teacher. And I forget why you had to end so suddenly or whatever. He said that. Because I think
that was his comeback after Trudeau's comeback, which was also good.
Yeah. So Polyev didn't. I thought Polyev started it with that comment, and then.
Trudeau, I can't remember what started that, but yeah, that was his comeback because Trudeau said that Polyev is a career politician, and unlike him, like I actually worked in, I don't know if it was the private sector, but I actually worked as a drama or as a teacher for a while, and then Polyev came back and said, and we don't know why you left or something like that. And that was obviously jab.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there was a scandal going on at the time. There was accusations of, I think, sexual harassment of some kind. I'm trying to go back in my memory with that. So I don't want to say anything if it's untrue or whatever. I think that's what it was. But it is true. Look at the two that we're choosing from. A part-time drama teacher and a career politician who's never had a job other than a politician. So if you were to just have a conversation and not be partisan, that's the way you would talk about it. You wouldn't have a leaning one way or the other and say, but right after you said something. But his dad was prime minister already, and so he learned a lot through that. No, you don't say a but, or Polyev, but that means he at least knows more about the situations at hand. He's been there longer. He's been in leadership. No, you just leave it as it is. One's a career politician. He's never really had to feed his family like everyone else. He's had a really good wage, has had, sure, his background before he was a politician, maybe you could talk about he came from more humble beginnings or whatever. And that's just looking at it for what it really is and not leaning one way or the other. How do we as a society start having conversations like that, Shane? Do you think we have the ability to really look at facts, look at people's records? Like for one thing, in the United States, it's interesting this next election, if in fact Donald Trump does go head to head with Biden. And, John Stossel shed some light on that situation. But you see how now you have each one you can compare with 4-year records. So people can at least analyze how they did and what they would do if they were in office. So it's none of this, hope and change thing where you never really had a chance. So you usually have an advantage with that because you don't have a record to scrutinize. Whereas here you have two people who were president for 4 years each, and so you can compare them. So when do we get to this point where we can actually just compare apples for apples, oranges with oranges, with all this spin and stuff like that and bias? Is it possible? Can we do that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we just have to look at these candidates for who they are and what they've accomplished, and judge not just their policy, but I think character is important too. And when it comes to the Republican Party in the States, like you said you didn't watch the debate, I would encourage you to look it up because it was pretty entertaining. And you see, they have other options and much better options. So that's another thing. Like, look at the other options you have out there. But at the end of the day, we just have to decide as individuals, look at the data and judge based on that.
And that's hard, right? Because where are we getting our data from? We used to rely on news.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of partisanship in news, and it's really, how do you get to these facts? I know somebody said watch CPAC in Canada or C-SPAN in the United States, and that way you can actually just see for yourself. That takes a lot of time to just, or watch a full day of Parliament, and hear everybody. You want someone to get in there and be a watchdog or whatever and do that. But anyways, I guess a lot of it's on us, right, to figure that out.
Yeah, question period is an hour. And I guess that will probably be resuming in over a week or something. But I don't know. It's entertaining to watch. It's frustrating too because you don't ever get any real answers. I tend to think that the House Speaker's job should be to ensure that the person receiving the question actually answers that question.
Exactly.
Not just keep things in order, but make sure they're actually answering the questions because they're living off of our taxpayer money. That's the least they could do.
Yep, I got you on that. I agree wholeheartedly. There needs to be transparency, accountability. They represent us, and it'd be really nice to go back to that. But unfortunately, I think that's going to be a tall order to either go back or to go get to the crux and really have a society that's really based on what people really want, with all of the globalization and all these other factors coming into play. But we're going to be talking more about that tomorrow. We're going to start the show a little bit earlier, I think, so that way I can get out. I have to go on a bit of a jaunt, so I'll have to leave. And speaking of that, I think you have to go as well, right, Steve?
Yes.
Yes. I really appreciate your time, Shane. I think it was a great discussion, and hopefully we can see you back next Wednesday as well, if your schedule permits, that is.
Sure, will do.
Okay, well, have a great one, and we'll see you hopefully next week, and we'll see you on the show anyways in the meantime. Thanks, Shane.
All right, thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.
Bye.
Okay, ciao. That was Shane. He joins us. He's been joining us Wednesdays to lend a little bit more commentary on news locally and abroad, and he has a journalistic background, went to school for journalism. And so there's been some people that have said things like, oh, is this really, news commentary? Like, who are you to say these things and whatever? And I'm a lot of times critiquing journalists and their coverage of things. And so I thought it would be really great. And Shane reached out, and we're really grateful to have him on the show. So a lot of comments coming in here, doing my best to get them up on the screen. Political conversations are always one that people have a point of view on, and that's rather new as well. Never used to be like that as a society. A lot of people were more, I don't know, they knew who they were going to vote for, and that was it. And less discussion, less, I guess, emotion. There's a lot of emotion in it these days. Good morning, everyone. Denise joining us. Better late than never. And so that's that. Now to continue with our, speaking of a little bit more broader issues, more general, Dr. Jordan Peterson has been in a fight with his the College of Physicians of Ontario Colleges of Physicians, to basically not lose his license in Ontario based on how he interacts on social media. And there was an interview that was done with him from the Epoch Times quite some time ago, a couple of years back, and he's basically giving his take on what, in general, through Marxism, through the Marxist or pro-modernist movement that kind of got into our universities, education system, and then through there perpetuated the ideologies of Marxism throughout our society. Now it's ending up with, we'll talk more about on where it's ending up tomorrow globally, and the global push for a Marxist type globalist society tomorrow. But Dr. Jordan Peterson very eloquently talking about it. And again, the video was not at where we left off yesterday. I did my best to kind of pinpoint where, here he's talking about the education system. There might be a little bit of overlap from what he talked about yesterday, but we'll still dive right in and we'll hear what he has to say about the whole ideology and where it is and how it got into our schools and what it's doing to our society and what it is in general.
A radical postmodern, leftist, communitarian, equity-oriented ethos. That's what they're doing. They're even subsuming the teaching of mathematics and science under that umbrella. And none of this is subtle, man. You just go online and download the documents and read them. And if you read them critically and carefully, well, since I've been really looking into this, which would be since last September, really starting to look at it from a legislative and policy level, I mean, the first thing I came across was the Ontario Human Rights Commission website, which is an absolute travesty. Those people are so dangerous, it's almost, you almost can't believe it. The Ontario Human Rights Commission, it should be abolished. It's a very subversive and dangerous organization, as are the human rights tribunals. Those things are dangerous. The Ontario Institute for the Studies of Education, that bloody thing is a fifth column. The people who are producing the educators that emerge from that institute, they should be put on trial for treason. Like, it's serious stuff. And the idea that the purpose of education is to get them while they're young, in kindergarten, so that this radical postmodern Marxist ideology can be so thoroughly inculcated among people when they're young that they have no chance of escaping from it. And that's what's happening in the education systems. It's unbelievable. Every day I come across new policy statements of this sort that make my jaw drop. It's like, as Canadians, we're so accustomed to our political system working that we don't pay any attention to it. And so when you ring the bell and say, hey, there's a problem, people think, no, there's not. This is Canada, for Christ's sake. There's no problems here. You must be insane, right? And that's the right thing for them to think. Of course, when I started talking about Bill C-16 back in October, the first wave of public response was something like, this professor is like a demagogue who's, exaggerating the danger because of his own problems and for whatever reputation might accrue to him. And the funny thing about that criticism is that was the right criticism, right? Because when someone stands up in a country that functions and says, hey guys, there's something really rotten going on here, the first thing you should do is assume that that person has gone off the rails. But the problem is that I haven't gone off the rails. That's the problem. The problem is that the problems that I'm pointing to, they're real. Like, look, I talked over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to I would say, you know, if you imagine Canada's top 20 journalists, mostly in print, I talked to 10 of them. They're all terrified of speaking out about such things, say, as cultural appropriation. These are the main journalists in Canada. They're already censoring themselves with regards to what they'll print, and if they don't censor themselves, their editors will. And these aren't low-level people. These are people who have massive reputations, and you'd think that would be sufficient, you'd think, to protect them from being mobbed. But they're terrified. Well, the tolerance issue is interesting, because what tolerance means is, I'm stupid and flawed, and so are you, so I'll make you a deal. You don't harass me too much about my stupidity and flaws, and I'll try to leave you the hell alone too. And that's a pretty good deal for everybody. So that's the tolerance issue, right? We're all flawed, and if we demand too much of one another, in terms of perfection and unity of belief, or even unity of thought, or even coherence of thought, then we're going to end up permanently at each other's throats. So we should just try not to make unnecessary enemies. That's tolerance, and it's a good principle. The diversity issue, the tolerance doesn't mean anything goes. That's not tolerance. That's refusal to take responsibility for mature discrimination. And discrimination has also become a dirty word. It's like there's no difference between discrimination and thinking. They're the same thing. Now you might say, well, what about unfair discrimination? It's like, well, that's a whole different issue. It's like if you have person A and person B and they're both equally qualified for a job, there's something wrong if you let something other than their qualifications determine whether or not they should get the job. I mean, no one debates that seriously anymore. You know, so if somebody doesn't get a job because of their race, everybody says, well, you know, what the hell's wrong with you? You're not taking advantage of the person's talent. You're doing society a disservice, and you're hurting individuals unnecessarily. You shouldn't do that. It's like, okay, fine. We all agreed about that back in like 1965. That's covered. So, but the idea that anything goes with regards to tolerance and lack of discrimination, that's an entirely different thing. That does not mean that all people are the same, or that all abilities are the same, or that everything is of equal value. And so there's a big difference between tolerance and nihilism. And so lots of people say tolerance when they mean, well, anything goes, I can do whatever I want, I don't have to be responsible for anything, I don't have to think, and there's no difference between people no matter how they act. It's like, sorry, that's not a philosophy, man. That's a recipe for chaos and disaster. And then the diversity thing, it's like, oh, I see, we need more black people on our board because all black people think the same way. That's how we're going to play this, is it? We're not going to be able to think. So it's such a pernicious philosophy because it's predicated on the idea that the way someone thinks is inextricably tied with their group identity. Well, that's what the bloody racists used to think. You know, well, no, we're not going to invite, let's say, Iranians into our culture because all those Iranians think the same way. Well, I thought that was what racism was. And so the idea that unless you have your bloody board of governors, say, or the middle strata of your organization arranged so that every single group has equitable representation, you don't get a diverse range of opinions. It's so, first of all, that's just technically wrong because it isn't racial and ethnic and gender diversity that gives you diverse opinions. That's just an idiotic, that's just a, I don't know how you could be, I can't understand how you could be so uninformed historically and technically that that argument would make sense to you. But apart from that, it's clearly, see, the bloody postmodernists, they're always criticizing what they call biological essentialism. So if I say, well, look, you know, on average, women have a different set of interests than men, which they do, by the way, and that's not sociocultural. They say, well, that's biological essentialism. That's wrong. But then when it comes to race, they're perfectly willing to say, oh, well, you have to have an equitable representation of all the different races, because otherwise you won't get the proper diversity of opinions. It's like, well, hold on a sec. Is race a biological construct? And you don't get the bloody diverse opinions without them emerging from this underlying biological construct? How is that not biological essentialism? And it's biological essentialism of the worst type. Having said all that, I would also caution people against making the assumption that what the radical postmodernists say they're after has anything to do with what they're actually after. Because they're not after equity. They're not after tolerance. They're not anybody's friend. Not at all. They're power. They're after power, and that's it. And they use all this compassion language, which is like, you just have to scratch the surface of that and you find out how fast that vanishes. They use all this compassion language, and I'm on the side of the oppressed, all of that posturing. It does nothing but mask the underlying drive to power. And that's in keeping with their own damn philosophy, because for the postmodernists, there is nothing but power.
So that leads in well with what we'll be talking about tomorrow, with where we're at in our world and how this ideology has now come to be going for the gusto. They're going for it. They want total world domination, and they're going to do it. And come heck or high water, and how they're doing it, we'll talk about tomorrow on the show. It should be pretty entertaining if it goes a little bit the way that I think it will be going. Lots of information. Spoiler alert, it's basically done through the guises of the UN. UN, you spell it UN. So that's where all this ideology comes to a head, and then tries to assert power throughout the world in the way that, and they've come to it. He's explaining how they got to it and got people to go along with it so far. And now it's going to kind of, we're going to see where it all leads. And that'll be on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, everyone, for commenting. I hope you got something out of today for local information and, making sense of our world. And I appreciate you jumping on. And we'll see you, hopefully, God willing, same time, same place tomorrow, right here on CKLU 96.7 FM, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao. Make sure to share. Take care. And ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.